Welcome back to the Inspired Impact podcast. So, this episode, I would really like to talk about something that we may not all think about or talk about very often, and that is betting on ourselves. You know, it's probably really hard when you think about all the things that other people are doing out there, risks that other people are taking, but at the end of the day, who else can you trust to bet on other than yourself? This concept, you hear people talk about all the time. You hear other people comment on, how do you trust in others if you don't trust in yourself? Or how do you look for the light at the end of the tunnel? But really, you have to think that inside of you, you know what's best for you. And you have plans for what's best for you. And don't let other people stand in your way. Technology's changing. Things around us are changing every day. And there might be an idea you think of and you say, you know what? Just maybe this might work. Just maybe this is something new. And it's interesting because, throughout my life, I've thought about all kinds of things. I probably have 9 or 10 ideas that come to my head at any given time. And I always tell myself, out of those 10 ideas, at least one's a good idea. Whether it's a business idea or a business venture. I used to think about food delivery way before Uber Eats was even a thing. I thought about Redbox way before it was ever a thing. I remember growing up as a kid, I would tell my dad that, hey, why do we rent this movie from Blockbuster here and then we go on vacation to, Grandma and Grandpa's house in another state? Why can't we just turn it into that Blockbuster there? U-Haul does it. You can rent a U-Haul here in one state and drive to another state and turn it in. You can do it with a rental car. Why can't you do it with movies? And at the time, my dad's just like, it's just not how the way the world works. And we talked about it, and, he's like, he's still kind of farther behind the technology. And now watching all the stuff around us, and he looks at me and goes, I never gave you the credit of the ideas and things you thought with because I wasn't ready to accept where technology was at. And I look back on it now and I say, I don't hold anything against me and my dad's conversations for that. But I look back at it and say, what if I would have betted on myself? What if I would have trusted myself when that thought of what was possible with those ideas? And why did I not try to move forward? Why did I listen to somebody else tell me, even though it was my dad, it can go for anybody? Why did I let somebody else tell me that, hey, that's not how the world works? And sure enough, somebody thought about it, somebody did it, and there we have it. And obviously that's with, DVDs, not with VHS tapes, show my age here. But I used to think the same thing about, McDonald's or look at like Burger King or whatever else. And I would tell myself that, hey, look, I can order a pizza from Domino's. I can order pizza from Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, whatever it may be. And I could pay a couple extra dollars and they'll bring my food right to my house. Why can't we do that with other places, with other restaurants, with other food? And again, someone just told me, well, that's just not how things work. There's no profit to be made. There's nothing that we can do there that's going to make it. And so then I listened to him and I said, all right, well, I guess it's something that can't be done. But again, that was me failing to trust in myself and bet on myself, knowing that that idea was good. And maybe it was just before its time, but you know what? I didn't try. I didn't attempt it. And I'm not saying that I would have been the person to invent that idea. I'm not saying that it would have been successful at the time that I thought of doing it. I'm not saying by any means that this was my idea and somebody else stole it from me. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is I failed to bet on myself. And like I said in the beginning when we started talking about these things, this can be a uplifting, motivational kind of podcast and conversation and all the thinking of people, but we have to take time for us. We have to think about the things that we think about and know that maybe if we just try, if we take that chance to bet on ourselves, what could be accomplished. If you tell yourself you're never going to get that promotion, or that you're not qualified for the job, or somebody else is more qualified than you are, then guess what? That person who may not be more qualified than you are, but you think is more qualified than you, they're going to get that job because they bet on themselves. And, you know, it's just interesting to look back at the things that we've done in our lives and think about missed opportunities or missed chances. And now I'm not saying put yourself in a position where you are starving or you're, struggling to make that happen, especially if you have a family. But you know what? Sometimes, just like gambling, just like the theme of betting on yourself, sometimes you have to know when to go all in. Gambling, they always say you can't win if you don't play, right? So how are you going to win against yourself if you don't take the chance to bet on yourself? Even the underdogs win in scenarios. How many people would say, you take a football game, or you take a basketball game or a baseball game, and the odds are going 1,000 to 1 to somebody else, and you just happen to be like, I have $5 and I'm going to bet on the underdog. Well, what happens if that underdog pulls through? What kind of success or what kind of win comes about when the underdog pulls through? And that's why it's important to think about that when you might have everybody rooting against you. Sure, you'll have people in your corner that will tell you that you're doing great things, or give you those pep talks that you're so anxiously awaiting for. But at the end of the day, are they really the ones that are doing it? And you might be sitting here thinking to yourself, well, that's easy, Chris. You could sit here and tell us all day long to bet on ourselves. And, how do I know it's going to work? I can't tell you what's going to work in those instances where you bet on yourself. But I'll tell you what, I took the chance to bet on myself for this podcast. I took the chance to bet on myself to share a message because I felt these messages are valuable to somebody. So I can't sit here and tell you that I don't practice what I say. I'm here right now, betting on myself, betting that people want to hear this message. And like I said, there's people around me who support me or think, hey, you can do this. And it's funny because when I first started this, I decided that I was going to read statistics on podcasts. And, you go through all the podcast material and you see that they'll say things like X amount of number of podcasts fail by X amount of episodes. Or they'll say, oh, this is an oversaturated market. You have to have a certain niche. And all that's already discouraging. And then, I think to myself, well, why did I want to research it? Why did I want to see all this? And it wasn't to discourage myself, but looking at it, it might seem a little intimidating and a little discouraging. But interestingly enough, it pushed me in a even further direction of wanting to do it. And not because I wanted to prove anybody wrong or that I wanted to prove myself wrong. But you know what I did? They said most podcasts fail after the third episode. That day I read that statistic, I recorded 4. Well, already passed the margin over they say most people stop. So there's the first one. The next milestone, the next goal is people say that a podcast will last an average of like 175 days before the person tunes down or stops doing it. Well, my goal is to surpass that. They say that people, try to hit certain numbers. And, I was listening to one of Eddie Pinero's Your World Within episodes, and he said, there's actually two things he said that were very valuable to me. And it said, when you first start, you're already halfway there. And that just related back to me about betting on yourself. The courage it took to start and just to do it was harder than actually doing it. Once you sit down and get behind what you're doing, you have a message to share. You have something that you just want to be involved with. It doesn't feel like a challenge or a struggle as much as it feels like something you're excited to wake up and do, something you want to be involved with. And for me, thinking even more deep into it, another thing that he had said was, it's okay to have goals. You might want to have goals of millions of followers or everything, but the first goal is always to get one, right? Get one, and then you can get as many as you want, because everything adds up. Now, looking at the numbers, I already have. I've passed that one. I got one person to listen to it, or I got a couple people listen to it. I haven't even looked at the statistics or the analytics on this before I decided to record this episode. But I know from looking at previously, there's already been one. So now I'm one closer to 100. Now I'm one closer to 1,000, because I'm taking the chance to bet on myself. And, making the podcast or just talking about life in general, it's not hard for me. I enjoy talking about things in my life. I enjoy talking about struggles. I enjoy that aspect of storytelling. But what I enjoy most is when I get the opportunity to share with people the value of different things. And to the point of this, the value in betting on yourself is just phenomenal. You will never know what you're capable of doing if you don't bet on yourself once in a while. I challenge and I encourage everybody to take that opportunity. If you think you can't do something, bet on yourself to do it. I think you'll be surprised at all the things that can happen if you just take that chance once in a while. Try to beat one of your own records. Challenge yourself to do better. Don't listen to the naysayers. Use the naysayers as motivation to continue to push forward, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Bet on yourself. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to this episode, and I'm looking forward to talking to you the next time. Have an excellent evening.